As this year's raining season kicks in, many communities in Nigeria will most likely face the yearly flooding cycle, which destroys property and devastates the environment. It is reported that no fewer than 176 local government areas, comprising of 1,249 in 30 states and the Federal Capital Territory, fall within the high flood risk areas, while 2,187 communities in 293 local governments in 36 states of the Federation and the FCT fall within the moderate flood risk areas in 2025. The 2025 annual flood outlook, as unveiled by the Minister of Water Resources, Joseph Utsef, with the theme Flood Resilience, focusing on communities, preparedness and adaptive strategies for flood management.
Minister of Water Resources and Sanitation.
The federal government is harnessing the power of local knowledge and technology through innovative community-based forecasting initiatives. These programs are designed to improve preparedness and response strategies for flooding, a growing concern as climate change intensifies weather patterns. A total of 31 states have been identified as high flood risk areas. Minister of Water Resources Joseph Utsef says it is crucial for communities within these regions to take proactive measures.
Moderate impact floods are expected in 445 communities in 116 local government areas in 24 states for the months of April, May, and June, and 1,458 communities in 271 local government areas fall within the months of July, August, and September.
The hydrological agency saddled with the responsibility of forecast has come up with interventions for reducing the impact of flood disaster on most vulnerable communities. It noted that collaboration is vital in these efforts.
Strengthen resilience of the communities and provide policymakers and disaster risk managers with timely, precise, and actionable flood risk information.
We are working with NISA and some other agencies on anticipatory action on floods, and we know that this year things are going to be different. We are going to be holding simulation exercises from decision makers all the way down to the local governments.
With the climate crisis already a reality, the focus on community-based initiatives reflects a shift towards empowering residents to take control of their safety and future.
Joining me to discuss this further is a program manager with the Global Initiative for Food Security and Ecosystem Preservation, Joseph Ibrahim. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Good morning.
Good morning.
If you look at it, the annual flood outlook has now highlighted the impact the incoming rains will, of course, have on communities in Nigeria and, of course, the FCT. Yeah. And it's not looking like it's a good one. But let me have your take on it, and how do you think that this will affect us?
Thank you very much for having me. So basically, I want to commend the Nigerian Hydrological Service Agency. What they have done is what we have been calling for, to have a very structured early warning system, and this is a very good early warning system for the entire country. Basically, the report is saying that we have 30 states out of the 36 or 37, including FCT, who are prone to flooding this year. And in that report, they have highlighted the two major influences on flood is climate change and improper drainage. So basically, at two levels, we have what we can do to curb climate change, but at the immediate, government needs to prepare for flood-resilient infrastructure, our drainages. And the good thing is that the President has made the Ministry of Water Resources, Federal Ministry of Water Resources and Sanitation. So there needs to be a lot of focus on sanitation to be able to clear our blocked drainages. I can tell you that majority of the flooding issues we are having, particularly in urban areas, as a result of improper disposal of waste into drainages that are clogging the drainages. So that sanitation needs to happen very fast as the rains are already here. In terms of climate change, yeah, a lot is happening, but we also need a lot of sensitization for our people to understand that we need vegetation to curb flooding. We have building infrastructures because of development, and the natural practice is to cut down all vegetation which are affecting the natural environment from trapping water and helping us to curb flood. So by and large, we need a lot of awareness, and we also need government to, beyond the presentation that has been made, to take very quick steps to prevent the devastating floods that we experienced in 2012 as well as 2022.
You know, so I remember that in Lagos, when Governor Fashola was governor,
yeah,
he said the fear of Fashola, when you remember that you're not supposed to drop something on the floor,
yeah,
after eating, maybe you take water or bottled water,
yeah,
that fear alone will not make you drop something.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that on the part of citizens as well, there need to be a lot of, you know, reorientating of the mind. There need to be a mind shift. There need to be a mindset about how these things go.
Yeah.
But looking at that, do you also think that this outlook is rather coming too late? Because I felt like, okay, if you already know how this thing spans out almost every year. Last year, I think I was actually at this event last year. You also know that, okay, at this particular time, these things are going to map. So if probably by January, you know, start prep, or maybe late December, you start prepping people that, okay, this is what is going to happen. You know, don't you think that for the fact that preparation should have already begun in top gear? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Just like NIMET is the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, they also have a rainfall prediction. Theirs came out in February. So I think this outlook and that of NIMET should probably, even at February, we're saying it was a bit too late. So probably around December or early January will be the best time to. Why it is important, first and foremost, also, if possible, to even come maybe in November. Because what we realize is that state governments and the federal government needs to incorporate some of these flood resilient infrastructure in their budget.
Exactly.
So when it comes too late, there's nothing, you just find out that they are just doing a crash program, intervention, seeking donations from international organizations and the private sector. And this is because this comes late. So when it comes early, it gives time for the subnationals to make adequate preparation and ensure that our citizens are safe. And then we continue to make awareness and people to avoid building on floodplains, which is also another dangerous precedent that we have seen. People are just looking for land, and any land available, whether it's floodplains or not, people build and continue to cause a lot of problems and make those places where there are natural waterways and people continue to struggle. So we need to continue to orientate our people and hope that we'll have some behavioral change as soon as possible.
So, before I even go to there was something that you said, and I just want us to touch on it a bit. You know, when you said that people just want land, they just build on it, and that's also it also throwbacks the question to the government. You know that these areas are flooded areas, so why give, is there no checks and balance on how people get plots of land to build on such areas?
Yeah, so there are, but the implementation and enforcement are very weak. You also notice that the current Minister of FCT, and yes, the science of climate change is there. Rainfalls are getting heavier. So because of that, we need to build flood-resilient infrastructure to be able to evacuate the large rainfalls that are falling very quickly. You know,
when you're talking, I was just remembering Biosa last year. It was a very was a very devastating one. You know, to see those children, see those women, and everybody was almost homeless. But let's look at it with the magnitude of high risk areas having potential to be flooded. Do you think that emergencies and humanitarian agencies can cope with this in terms of, how these things will come eventually? Because at the end of the day, it now looks like the emergency and the humanitarian agents are the ones who will be at the beck and call of people like, okay, come. How do we start managing all of that?
It's usually overwhelming. So that is why you continue to push for disaster preparedness and early warning system, because when you get to respond, the response is usually overwhelming.
Exactly.
It takes a lot of time for procurement.
Exactly.
You are talking of millions of people to get items, to procure all of those things will take some time. And then you are talking about people who have lost their livelihood. So all of this takes time. So it is important that we continue on this path of early warning, and most importantly, that government makes effort to build those infrastructure. For instance, a lot of us hear of the Lado Dam, the release water. The remedy to that is the construction of the Dastin Hausa Dam that will take water from that dam. And to date, that has not happened. So all of those flood resilient infrastructure that needs to be constructed or built, and government to prioritize them so that people will not have to respond in the place of disaster. Even when we are responding, it should be minimal.
So, we already know that, climate change is an issue. Yeah. And patterns of rain continue to change over time. Yeah. I did wanted to ask you that question before. How can we mitigate again this? Because that was the question I was trying to put towards to you, that okay, why you already know that this is what is going to be happening. So, but how do we mitigate against it? To know that we know these things happen over time. Rains change. I think the rain still fell up until like November last year. Yeah. So, how do we mitigate all of these things?
Thank you. So, climate change is happening. Some people, like the President of the United States, would tell you it is not, but the reality is that climate change is real and we are being impacted. What we see is that the rainfalls are getting heavier. Yeah. The durations and the frequency of the rainfalls
is getting expanded.
Yes. So the impact on our environment is not able to cope with it. And the immediate for us in Africa is that we're having longer droughts and then flooding. Yeah. So all of this, like I said, for longer drought, we need to be more resilient. It is already impacting us. For the global north, they would focus more on mitigation, doing a lot of things to reduce the carbon emissions in the atmosphere. But for us, it's all about adaptation, because the impacts of climate change are already here with us. And for us to adapt, we need climate-smart agriculture, because the greatest impact of climate change on Africans is food security.
Why can't we mitigate against it?
Yeah, we can. We should. Exactly. We should. But I'm saying our focus, because you are mitigating something that is already biting you. So it's like you are already sick, and you are instead of solving or treating your sickness, you are trying to do some preventive measures. It's already too late for that. So for us, we are almost at a point where mitigation is almost too late. Our focus should be on adaptation. Yeah, and adapting to this will require us changing the way we cultivate our food, even the way we build our infrastructure. You discover that the heat waves has increased. Yeah. People are not able, and this is as a result of the way we build. Initially, maybe 20 years, 30 years ago, the place was not so hot, so you can decide to build your houses without cross ventilation. Yeah. You use one window, use a ceiling that is so compact. But with the way everything has changed now, we need to now start building and taking cognizance of our environment and why we need to build climate resilient infrastructure, like I said, and also in the way we cultivate food, we use climate information. We find that farmers are generally struggling because initially, before, one old man in your village can just sit and tell you when rains will come and when it will stop. But increasingly, farmers are not able to do that. So they need information to be able to adapt to what is changing. And all of that also ties to what is happening with floods. We need to change the way we do things. Drainages, flood-resilient infrastructure, very, very important.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Mr. Joseph. Thank you so much.